if I could spend it making really complicated decisions, not entering data and sweating over an EHR and, fumbling with a disk because the patient's image won't load. I mean, really going from patient to patient at the top of my license and then getting home on time for bedtime with my kids, like that is a great day. And I would not get burnt out with a day like that. And I'm telling you, it is possible already.
Welcome to another episode of the Physician Growth Accelerator, a show where we break down your medical practice systems into vitals, give you the tools to diagnose root cause of what may be restricting your growth, and prescribe what to do about it. I'm your host, Zed Williamson, and I believe that every system is perfectly designed to get the result it gets. And the freedom and the power in that belief is if you don't like what you're getting, that's okay. We just have to tweak the system. And if you're listening to this podcast, I'm going to assume that you're dealing with some level of constraint in your medical practice, obstacles in the way of you achieving your growth or goals. And that can look like hitting a plateau or maybe employee drama. It can also feel like burnout, which we're going to talk about specifically today. And I'm really excited because today we have a special guest, Dr. David Keynes, a practicing full-time urologist and founder and CEO of Wellprept. Wellprept is fixing clinic day by reducing the need for repetitive explanations for the physician. David, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Zed. I really appreciate it.
So I came across this software, and what we do at the Physician Growth Accelerator is we identify constraints within practices. And I loved the thing you are solving for. And so I want the audience to understand what Wellprept is. But before, can you actually just give a brief history of where does this come from? Why did you create Wellprept?
All right. Yeah, I have been called a reluctant entrepreneur, and I think that captures me quite well. I did not set out to start a company. I certainly didn't want to create software in any specific way, but I'm generally a very happy person. I love being a urologist. In particular, I really love operating. But 2015, 2016-ish, I was about 7 or 8 years into practicing after fellowship, and I was distinctly burnt out. And, I'm just listening to you introduce your podcast, and, you know, I looked for stumbling blocks. What was it exactly that was bothering me? And it's always multifactorial, but for me, I remember a specific moment. I was in with a patient who was just diagnosed with prostate cancer. He was in his late 60s. And I really, really enjoy the moments when I'm face to face with somebody in an exam room and I'm earning their trust and I'm having, a very real conversation with another human being. That's what I came to this profession for. And I was explaining Gleason scoring, grading for prostate cancer for the 3057th time. And, it's a good explanation, but I've done it so many times it's like driving to work and you realize that you've arrived and you don't remember driving. And I felt terrible about it, mostly because I'm not being the doctor that I set out to be when I'm in the middle of those talk tracks. I'm not doing all those things I just talked about, like being in the moment and being fully present and having an unpredictable, genuine conversation with somebody. I'm like a robot. It's a version of myself that um, I don't love, and I think a lot of other doctors go through the same thing. So I thought, what? How can I fix this? And right about that time, uh, Loom video was starting. The videos we see now with your picture in the corner in a circle, and you can record your screen. I thought, you know what? I'm gonna do this Gleason score explanation really well one time. And I did that, and I put it on YouTube. Not Definitely not to get any YouTube views, only to send
Sure.
my patients to see it. And I also did that to explain robotic prostate removal, which is a procedure that I've also done thousands of times and explained many more thousand times. And it was a risk at that moment. I remember thinking, God, am I going to piss patients off? Are they going to be insulted that I'm directing them to a video instead of me, delivering that speech organically? So I told my secretary, hey, listen, if we get a prostate cancer referral, can you send them to these videos and also the PDF of the NCCN patient guide for prostate cancer? And she says, sure. And, why, by the way, why did she say sure? Because my staff also wants clinic to go well, and they also want patients to have a good experience. Um, so I anticipated some pushback there, and there was none. So clinics start happening after that little tweak, and they're a lot better. Not every patient went through the materials, but the ones that did, first of all, were very thankful. They considered it a gift that I had taken the time to get this information to them before they arrived. And instead of spending the whole visit getting them up to speed and then cramming what I consider the most enjoyable and fulfilling parts of doctoring in the last 5 minutes, the whole thing was flipped. I was doing a recap in the beginning, and then I was deepening their understanding throughout the visit and answering all of their questions. And it was very personal and it was very specific and it was very unpredictable, enjoyable, fulfilling. And I thought, God, this is back to the way things felt when I was a medical student. And I fell in love with this and when I was a resident. And so little tweak for me had an outsized benefit. And so then, right around the same time, also, I don't know if your listeners have heard of Linktree, but on Instagram, people will have one link for their social media account, and it's a stack of buttons on a web page. And I thought, God, that would be a very easy way for me to organize my resources. And so I'm just going to keep using prostate cancer as a convenient example. I created a page similar to Linktree, and it had the NCCN guide, a couple of these videos I made, a link to a support group, 8 or 9 things that were my favorite resources. And now I was sending patients to one link, and it was really easy for them, easier for my secretary. And and I thought to myself, boy, I wonder if this is just me. And I asked 10 friends of mine, also urologists, hey, if I made these mini condition pages for you, can you tell me if it helps your practice? And it wasn't just me. My friends in my extended network also felt like it changed things for them to the degree that a couple of them printed the QR code out on their business card. And it was at that moment that I thought, all right, this has made my clinic day so much more enjoyable. I almost felt obligated to get it in as many people's hands as I could because I really think doctors are struggling with these feelings and software can help.
Yeah, I love it. There's a foundational thing that drives us at the Physician Growth Accelerator and Trackable Med, and that is we are here to help people realize they don't have to live the way they're living. And so often you get into a habit, you think it's the way it has to be done, and you just need to accelerate through it. And that's the feeling I think you felt. It's like, I love how you described it as the drive to work. And the challenge there is you've done it 3,000 times, but it might be the first time for the patient to
Exactly.
hear it. And that curse of knowledge that you have, which is this foundational understanding, the more you get, kind of away from the love of explaining that, it actually is not great for the patient. And so what I love about this is you came up with an idea and you solved something that helped you, but it's also better for the patient. And I'm curious if
Yeah.
you've witnessed that side of it.
I've witnessed the patient side. So part of what, this has become a real passion of mine. Um, as you can imagine now, helping spread the word about this, helping doctors feel like they can be more efficient without working as hard. Um, and what I love about it is doctors have something to love about it, and also patients do. So, yeah, on the patient side of it, not just from my patients, but from Wellprept users who email me every day and they tell me these anecdotes. My patients feel there's so many layers to what is good about this from a patient side, and they express things like this. Number one, thank God I don't have to Google this. You've basically Googled it for me. Just the stress relief of not having to go out on the internet by yourself. Because think the internet has become a little bit of an unfair place, because from a point of view of patient education, there definitely are great resources out there. But, I had another patient comment, it seems like everybody's trying to sell me something. So not only is the patient trying to learn what is the prostate, they're like, oh my God, there's all these ads. Is this site legit? Is this information vetted? So that's the new problem on the internet. In the early 2000s, it was, are there any good resources? Now it's sort of there's bloat.
Yep.
Patients can't navigate it on their own. So that's part of it. But if you think about any medical condition, whether it be prostate cancer or diabetes or high blood pressure or coronary artery disease, there's there's stages of understanding. What is the prostate? What can go wrong with a prostate? And then what's wrong with my prostate? And I want to spend as much time on what's wrong with my prostate as possible. It's not that I don't want to explain the basic facts. Patients deserve that from me if there's no other way to do it. But the way our system is designed now, and this is every doctor, it takes weeks to months to get an appointment. Okay. The appointment is short. And that face-to-face time is coveted. I don't know what the right word is. It is so special, that face-to-face time. The things that should happen in that time should be things that cannot happen any other time. We can only do a physical exam in that time. And and the rest of it should be filled with very personalized and very specific things that cannot be accomplished. So, just to stick with the example that I happen to fall on, if I'm taking out somebody's prostate for prostate cancer, there's a lot to do in that in-person visit. I've really, first and foremost, I've got to earn their trust. If I'm going to operate on somebody, I mean, that is a big deal to allow someone else to do. So, and it's not easy to develop trust quickly. Um, it takes being present. It takes showing that you care, uh, showing people a genuine side of you. Um, but I want to get quickly pull that patient's MRI and show them where the prostate cancer is in relation to their nerve bundles. And so much needs to be understood before I can get to that moment. It's almost not fair to the patient to waste any time uh, explaining what is prostate cancer. I mean, listen, this is somewhat idealized, and if someone's listening and they're saying, well, not every patient is not going to work for every patient, and it's true, it's not going to work for every patient.
Sure.
And then those visits are going to be like all your other visits have been. We can't fix everything, but let's work towards an ideal version of a visit. I'm experiencing that now in my clinic, so I know it's possible. And what I like to point out here is solving burnout is is fairly straightforward if you think about your medical student self. You rewind back to the point in time or the period in time when you fell in love with, you were watching another doctor or you were talking to a patient and you just thought, God, there's nothing better than this. This is real. This is incredible. If I could spend my clinic day having one meaningful patient interaction after another, you know, hardly doing any documenting, or I mean, we could talk about that separately, but doing documenting in a way that doesn't tax my brain. If I could spend it making really complicated decisions, not entering data and sweating over an EHR and, fumbling with a disk because the patient's image won't load. I mean, really going from patient to patient at the top of my license and then getting home on time for bedtime with my kids, like that is a great day. And I would not get burnt out with a day like that. And I'm telling you, it is possible already. I mean, you combine something like Wellprept or any way of getting patients up to speed at home before they arrive, plus something like an AI scribe, and you know, you're feeling like the doctor that you wanted to be again.
I think there's a couple important things you mentioned there. I want to go back to something that you said, that the time is special and you shouldn't be doing anything in that time that can be done outside of that time. I want that statement to sink in to the listeners, because we take so many things for granted and we are just running through our day. And just mentally review your clinic days and think of how many things probably could happen outside of that visit. And I appreciate that statement. It's very powerful. And then the other aspect is, burnout does not come from working hard. Burnout comes from paddling, but your oar isn't in the water.
Yes.
If you're paddling and the oar's in the water, you don't get burned out. It's just when you feel like you're not moving and it's wasted. And that's what I think I love the callback to um, in school, because you're fired up. You could be as busy as heck and you're not going to be burned out because everything feels awesome. And when you get to the point where you are now, you realize there's all these things that are they're just in the way. And if you can offload them, some things we just got to do, it's all right, I don't like that part, but I got to do it. But if there's things that we can replace, it's such a good call out that is a way to remove burnout. Because like I said, it's not because you're busy. It's because you're busy with things that you don't really feel is moving anything forward. Am I off base at all stating it that
No,
way?
no, I absolutely love the paddling with the oar, not in the water statement. And I completely agree with you. It's not the being busy. And just to take that a step further, this is why I have trouble with the resiliency narrative that that gets bolted on burnout. You can't get to this point and not be resilient. I mean, it's almost comical. I mean, medical school is such a grind. Not to mention residency. I mean, there were times when we sat in the library for overnight and fell asleep on our forearms and woke up and kept studying. I mean, resilience is not the issue. I can have, if I have a very busy clinic and at no point in time do I feel like I'm spinning my wheels, I love it. I mean, it is a real privilege to do what we do. I mean, patients, it's incredible the trust that they put in us. And I'm in awe of it every time I do an operation. Where I feel like I want to just walk out into the parking lot and leave is if I like somebody, I don't have their films and it's a consult for a kidney tumor and I can't get the CD to load and the computer has an error message and then I got to go to a different computer. And by the way, the next patient, they never got their records and the patient doesn't know why they're there. Okay. that feels so frustrating. But those are systems problems to your original point when you open the podcast. We fall to the level of our systems that we have in place. And so, yes, I fully agree that it is not from being busy. Efficiency is working, it's become trite at this point, but working smarter, not harder. We don't mind being busy. If we have good systems in place, this job is like unmatched. It's the greatest thing ever.
Yeah. I'd like to take the perspective of the patient again. So the Physician Growth Accelerator, and people can go to physiciangrowthaccelerator.com and click on vitals and see how their vitals stack. But we break things down into three categories, and your tool affects two of the three categories, the capture stage and the experience stage. And when you create something where you have put this information together for it to be easily consumed by a patient, you're increasing the likelihood of trust before you actually meet them. And there's actually bias, there's neuroscience behind what you're doing. And that affects the capture stage, because the capture stage is when a patient has identified there's an issue, they want someone to fix it, and now they're in that world of, who do I start to trust? And then once they show up, your visit, because you can spend more time about them and less time getting them up to speed, they feel more heard. And that's the experience stage where they actually decide, I do trust this person. Because trust is so important. And I think trust is one of those words that gets thrown around a little bit too much and too easily. And I love this definition of distrust. It's deciding that what is important to me is not safe with this person. And that's powerful. As a physician or a surgeon, you would never want a patient to feel that, but that is the definition of distrust. And so if we use tools where you're setting an expectation, they're kind of learning about who you are and your level of knowledge before they show up. So they're coming in with a different expectation as opposed to just a deer in the headlights. And now you're spending more time with them about their specific scenario, which no one else has done, because there's not enough time to do it. And so I'm hoping that people are connecting the bias and the heuristics aspect of this, how it's impacting the patient experience, because it's making it better for the physicians, which is awesome, and it's driving down the chance of burnout, and it's helping the patient be in a better place to actually lay trust with somebody. And I'm curious if you've noticed the interaction with patients. Has it shifted at all since I'm sure you use this tool as often as possible. Have you witnessed anything different in what clinic feels like with actually the patient visit?
Yes. Um, yeah, a resounding yes. So we need to get beyond this very outdated concept, and you've already seen this perfectly, but just to restate it in a different way, this concept that the visit starts when the patient walks through the door. I mean, that's 1950, right? I mean,
Yeah.
we now are lucky enough to live in a time when the visit can start virtually long before, the moment the appointment is made, let's say. Um, the most common comment from patients and other well-prepped users tell me this all the time. The patient starts off and says, I feel like I know you already. So
Wow.
why do they say that? Because it's this concept of giving a gift. If I've taken the time to curate this information, um, and, and I think on some level, patients probably understand. I only had to do that once, but still, each time I'm giving that to every new patient that comes through the door. And it really does feel like a gift. And because they know there's sort of like my stamp of approval on it, um, they feel like as they go through the material, they're sort of spending time with me. And it's not only because I have some videos of actually me talking. Not every well-prepped user has taken the time to record their own videos, and even the ones who never do that still experience this benefit. It's just
Yep.
that Dr. Smith, this is Dr. Smith's favorite stuff. They feel like you're sort of somehow over their shoulder giving a thumbs up the whole time. And that's why when they walk in the door, they say, thank you for sending that stuff, or I feel like I know you already, or gosh, I wish I wish all my doctors did that.
Hmm.
It really made me feel less anxious. By the way, even patients who are octogenarians, which is, you really can't count anyone out these days. Even nonagenarians have come in with a kidney cyst. I've got this handout about kidney cysts on my kidney cyst page that they've printed out, and they've underlined and highlighted the whole thing. And they come in and they say, does my cyst have any septa on it on the MRI? I mean, like, how wonderful is that as a way to start a visit with somebody who you've never met? Um,
That's very
it put
cool.
it put such a smile on my face. Um, yeah, it's funny. Related to this, as you were talking, I was thinking, and I've often thought, why haven't doctors objected to this too much in the past? Like, why are doctors okay with giving their what is atrial fibrillation speech from scratch for decades on end? And some of it is like the doctor persona. We really kind of say yes to whatever is thrown at us. Generally speaking, as a breed, we're a very rule-abiding, fairly conservative group, which is wonderful, and because our job depends on that in a lot of ways. But are these is it out of guilt that people feel like they have to do this from scratch every time? I wonder about that.
It's interesting. It's likely habit, and it's likely a perceived gap in ability to go from where they are to what you're talking about. And that's why I like the idea of the tool, which
Yeah.
brings me to probably a good next question. For someone out there that, let's say they lean towards being a little bit cynical about this idea, what are they, what is that person normally surprised by after starting to use Wellprept from going from start to actually getting it done?
Yeah, they're normally surprised, very surprised how fast it takes. So we have we haven't got every specialty covered, but we have a fair number of specialties where we have curated a library of content already. So you sign on to Wellprepped, you click on a menu of things that you see commonly, and it's pre-populated with your specialty. And then these condition pages, we call them, are ready to go with what we think are very good open source content from all over the web. And people are sort of floored in a way that it's, they could technically start using it the very next day in clinic.
Right.
For some specialties where we don't have the library set up yet, people need to be a little bit more intrepid, and they start off by, for one thing, uploading all the handouts that they have in a dusty file cabinet that every doctor's office has in the country right now. Like, if I joke around that if I walk into any doctor's office and I say, "Can you take me to the file cabinet where you have all your manila folders with the over photocopied handouts?" And they say, "Oh yeah, right here. It's over here." Um, so the first thing people do is they just kind of scan those. We turn them into PDFs, and they live on their Wellprep pages forever. Um, so they're surprised how easy it is to get going. The way Wellprep works is the dashboard for the doctor is as simple as copy paste. So if you know how to copy paste, you can set up a Wellprep page in a minute. Let me just give you a quick example. Let's say you're a cardiologist, you want an atrial fibrillation page. You go to the JAMA patient page on AFib, copy that URL, paste it into your dashboard, go to YouTube, AFib, you'll see a video from the American Heart Association, copy the link, paste it in. if you only had those two resources on your AFib page, pretty darn good start, right?
Yep.
Um, and then you can take it to there from there to your heart's content. For specialties like urology, it's even more advanced where, it's fully built out.
So I think a good next step for someone listening right now, and you and I chatted about this before we started, so I appreciate you giving out your personal contact information. But if someone has questions, maybe you're curious how much information has been curated for your specialty, or you just want to talk to David specifically about your scenario, you can actually email him directly at david@wellprept.com. And we'll put that link in the show notes. But if you're listening, it's WELLPREPT, as in Tom.com. And email him, ask your question. I really appreciate you making it so easy for someone to reach out directly to you.
Yeah, I would encourage people, please don't be shy. I get emails every day from doctors from all around the United States, even globally, and it's the best part of my day. So please, send me an email and you start a conversation and see if we can try it out in your practice, and you'll very likely be pleasantly surprised.
That's excellent. You know, listeners, when you think about your practice, you think about your day to day, think about what your dream is for your practice, and just know that every system is perfectly designed to get the result it gets. And so if you're not getting to that dream today, that's okay. You're kind of doing it on purpose, and that's fine, because now all we got to do is tweak the system. And so if you feel like there are obstacles, or if you're feeling like there's burnout, Wellprept might be a tool that can help you in your clinic days and start fixing your clinic days. And also, the Physician Growth Accelerator knows where to look and how to remove the constraints and obstacles that are hindering your growth. So go to physiciangrowthaccelerator.com and request a business assessment review. David, I really appreciate you taking the time and spending it with us today. I'm excited to hear about the conversations you have. And I really appreciate you experiencing a constraint, thinking about how to get around it and fixing it, and then doing it for yourself and now sharing it with the world. So I really appreciate the time.
Thank you for the invitation. It was really an excellent conversation.
All right. Have a great week.